Welcome to the Massive Breakdown Podcast, episode 59. This is going to be our second podcast following the release of Destiny 2. So, if we want to hop right into it, the meta has shaken out right now to be basically three weapons. It's MIDA as the kinetic of choice, and then in the elemental slot, we've basically got Uriel's, or I believe it's Last Hope. Uriel's obviously is a high impact, not high impact, I believe they're called Precision. It's a precision auto rifle. And then Last Hope is one of the Omalon adaptive sidearms, which is a burst sidearm, obviously. And they're all very, very strong guns. That is basically what the meta has shapen up to be at this point in time. In terms of power weapons, we've got a little bit more even spread there. I'm seeing rocket launchers, fusions, shotguns, probably in about equal measure. I've seen a few sniper rifles. I actually think, having played with sniper rifles, made a concerted effort to do it a lot more recently, that they are undiscovered as of yet. The handling on them is atrocious, but if you use one of those armor mods that bumps up the handling, they actually feel quite snappy, and the aim assist on them is absolutely bonkers. And then grenade launchers, and even swords. There's a bunch of swords in there too now. Really, grenade launchers are the only power weapon that's left out, and I'm not totally upset about that because I have seen some players use grenade launchers to excellent effect when they're very, very good with them. But so the power weapons, we can basically say, are probably good enough. You don't need to touch those. But there's been a lot of chagrin and a lot of misery over the fact that people think that MIDA is an unbeatable weapon right now. It was MIDA multiplayer is what they're calling it right now. It was the trials of MIDA and all this other stuff. And I'm here to tell you that I don't believe that's the case. I believe MIDA is the strongest weapon in the Crucible right now in terms of overall stats, perks, everything like that. I believe it's probably going to get touched a little bit when they do a balance patch, but I do not think that MIDA is unbeatable. And I've been playing the entire last week without once touching MIDA, and I've been having great success. So I really look forward to talking to you guys about that. Right now, the map, particularly Eternity, really favored a MIDA playstyle, particularly on the two main lanes that are going down. Obviously, the one past Keyhole and the one past Temple. Those two lanes really favor a MIDA playstyle. And because they're the two most obvious lanes, a bunch of people tended to gravitate there, and then it just kind of developed into this meta circle jerk that had everybody using MIDA because that's what everybody who was beating them was using. But what I decided is that MIDA was not the gun that was going to help me. So me and another teammate, Zibby, switched over to our Lincoln Greens, which, spoiler alert, actually kills faster than MIDA with optimal and with body shots, just so you know. And we started running a much more aggressive play style, and we went flawless back-to-back runs. So, and almost every single team that we played against, every person on the team is using MIDA. So it's not like it is impossible to beat MIDA players. In fact, it is very possible, but you cannot beat a MIDA player at their own game. And I think that's where a lot of people are having issues. They're trying to stand off and go toe-to-toe with MIDA users in long-distance scout rifle lanes, and it's just not going to freaking happen. MIDA's got third eye, they can see you coming. MIDA's got high-caliber rounds, they can make you flinch. MIDA's got great stability, great range, and great aim assist. You're not going to be able to beat it head-to-head with another scout rifle. You need to get up in a MIDA user's face, because here's the thing. MIDA's optimal time to kill isn't that fast. Lincoln Green kills faster. Every auto rifle in the game kills faster. Every sidearm in the game kills faster. Every submachine gun in the game kills faster. And half of the pulse rifles kill at the same time or faster. But if you can get in a MIDA user's face, you're going to be able to beat them. The key to beating something that is good at an average level is simply to improve and to outplay it. Use different weapons, use different strategies, just like what I said. You can get past this simply by getting better. Whereas in Destiny 1, they tended to balance things for like the median players, the average players. And what that meant was things worked when you were right in the middle, but as soon as you got good, the guns were insanely imbalanced. And what ended up happening was basically this. It was that the guns that killed the fastest were also the easiest to use. Whereas in other games, the guns that kill the fastest are the hardest to use. Now, the problem in Destiny is that means good players are the only ones who can use the best guns, and that means bad players often don't stand a chance against them. And that's something Bungie tried to avoid in Destiny 1. That's why every single gun that was amazing in Destiny 1 was also the easiest weapon to use. The problem is, at the highest level, that means every single person is using one weapon. It's not very much fun. So I'm glad it doesn't seem like it's that way right now with Destiny 2.
And like you said, if you went into a match with high-skilled players, they have they have a lot more choices to be competitive. All of us really have a lot more choices because the guns are essentially balanced at the highest level. If there's a specific play style that just makes more sense to you, if playing a passive scout rifle play style with MIDA is just like feels awful, feels like death, you just want to do anything but that, you can do that. You just have to put a little bit of thought into it. You can't just do what the person that beat you did. You have to think about why they did that and how you can combat them in a situation that benefits you rather than them, instead of just, like you said, before, going head to head. If you try to take a Uriel into a MIDA lane, you're going to be at a disadvantage because even though Uriel has great range, it does not have the same range as MIDA. It's not a scout rifle. You have to be a little bit closer. And if you get closer, then the MIDA becomes a little more unwieldy and Uriel becomes very effective. And so that's, you kind of have these trade-offs, these choices, and the effective ranges feel really well defined in Destiny 2, which I think has contributed in a lot of ways to the game feeling more balanced.
And in terms of weapons that I would like to suggest that I feel like can specifically beat MIDA, obviously I've been using the Lincoln Green to great effect. I highly suggest you run a kinetic counterbalance mod on it, at least one if you're a hunter too, because the recoil direction is quite poor. It has a lot of sideways kick. With 2 counterbalance mods on it, straight up and down, beautiful. I can reach out and touch MIDA users, and I can make them flinch actually a little bit more than they make me flinch because the rate of fire is so high, which I absolutely love. Like I mentioned earlier, faster optimal time to kill, not super difficult to get, does not require all headshots, and a faster body shot time to kill. Only thing you're really sacrificing is a little bit of that range.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. One thing I want to add to that, I've been doing a lot of testing on the effects of mods over the last week, and I was taking a look specifically at the counterbalance mods. I know you had done a little bit of testing on that as well, and at this point, my best guess is that those mods are adding directly to the recoil direction stat rather than increasing stability. Because I noticed that weapons that already have a really high recoil direction and are fairly stable don't seem to come out a lot different. They seem to kind of maintain the same level of randomness, but then on a weapon like Lincoln Green, it's like apparent that it's doing something. On an SMG, it's very clear that you're getting a lot less side to side and a lot more in a straight line, even though that straight line's not necessarily going to be completely vertical. It might veer off to one side. The width of that line of shots is going to be much closer together, much narrower, and so it's going to be a lot easier to control. And certainly you throw on a second one and it just gets even easier.
You're going to have to, the honest truth is you're not going to beat it with another scout rifle other than possibly
Nameless Midnight?
The Nameless Midnight. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. But yeah, you're not going to beat it with any scout rifle other than possibly the Nameless Midnight. And you're only going to beat it with the Nameless Midnight if you make a MIDA user miss a headshot. Or miss 2 headshots, I should say. When you do get up close, I highly recommend the 600 rate of fire not sidearms, submachine guns. We've got the Antiope and the Adjudicator, I guess is how it's called. And we've also got a couple of them. I believe the Phosphorus and the out of options are 900 that have something called Phase Mag, which actually turns them into 600 rate of fire sidearms. So I highly, highly recommend the 600 rate of fire sidearms. They're a lot more, I want to say, controllable than the 900s. They have a little bit more range. You don't have to get as close in. You can reach out and touch people. And I highly recommend those because if you run up on a MIDA user with one of those things, they are not going to be able to kill you fast enough. You just have to make sure you get in close enough.
You were saying sidearms there, but I think you meant SMGs.
Yes, I did mean SMGs. Goodness, yep. They basically fit the same niche. And I was talking about them earlier, how basically they're the exact same thing. But yes, I did mean SMGs. The Antiope, the Adjudicator, the Phosphorus, the out of options. Those are all SMGs, submachine guns. 600 rate of fire for the Antiope and the Adjudicator, 900 for the Phosphorus and the out of options. But they have the ability to use Phase Mag, which transfers them into 600 RPMs. Like I said, better range than the 900s, a little bit more controllability. You can reach out and touch them. They actually do more damage even than the, I guess we'll call them the adaptive auto rifles, like the Scathe Lock and stuff like that. They actually do more damage than those do. The damage fall off is a little bit harsher. Most noticeably, the aim assist fall off is much harsher. It's very, very difficult to start hitting people outside of optimal range. But the fact of the matter is, they kill faster than the Uriels. They kill faster than the Prosecutor or whatever it is. So all those auto rifles that you're coming up against, they're going to kill faster than that. And they have a little bit more range than the Last Hope and the Last Dance, those sidearms. So I found that they're a perfect counter to that kind of MIDA strategy. If you run Lincoln Green and the Antelope or Lincoln Green and the Adjudicator, that's like a perfect hard counter. All you have to do is be smart about getting up close to those MIDA users. So the strategy that we ran, and because I know you guys are going to be saying, well, you know, it's easier said than done getting up close to a MIDA user. Easier said than done. Well, that's true. It is easier said than done. But we did it ourselves. And granted, we weren't, because of the way Trials is right now, which I appreciate the fact that it is no longer win-based matchmaking. Because I think, and I said this to you again before the recording, it bred a lot of toxicity in the community when it was win-based matchmaking. It made it almost impossible for average to above average players who didn't practice their asses off all the time or get carried to make it. But we were able to successfully beat almost all teams of MIDA users that we came up against. In the last 14 games, every team we went against, with the exception of, I believe, one team, had all MIDA users. And it's because we developed a strategy where 2 people would use MIDA, and they would go down to Temple, and they would look on the long lanes. 2 people would use Lincoln Green and close range weapons, and they would go up through Keyhole. And what would happen is, we found that a lot of people like to push Temple initially. And we would hold them up with the 2 MIDA users down there, and they wouldn't realize how many people were down there. They would think our whole team went down there. And the 2 close range players, me and another player, would push extremely aggressively from Keyhole and try to flank them. And what would end up happening is, because they were so infatuated with hard scoping down, trying to kill the other MIDA users down at the end of the hallway, even though they had their radar up, a lot of the times they still wouldn't notice until it was too late and we were already next to them. And as soon as we got next to them, they turned to face us. The MIDA users switched to their close range weapons and they collapse in from the side, and it's a perfect pinch. And it worked. And of course, players will adjust and they'll adapt and they'll start switching strategies. What they started doing generally after that was they would send all 4 people to Keyhole to try to prevent us from rushing them. So what we would do is we would fake the rush and then drop back, and they would push Keyhole really, really hard, trying to get in close, and then we'd play the mid-range a little bit. We wouldn't be far enough away that their MIDAs could do damage, but we wouldn't be close enough up that they could really do damage to us. We'd use our Lincoln Greens at that perfect little mid-range, that window right in between where MIDA and Uriels are most effective. That's where the Lincoln Green thrives. And that's where we'd sit, because we knew that they were going to want to prevent us from pinching, and the counter to a pinch is to aggressively push the pinchers because you think you have them outnumbered. So we would feint that we were going to send 2 people to Temple, and really we'd bring all 4 to Keystone to meet them, and we'd trap them that way. On offense, we would send 3 people to Temple, 1 MIDA user to Keystone. The Keyhole, 1 MIDA user... Yeah. You know what? I always call it Keystone, and I called it Keystone so much that I had to go buy myself a 15-pack of Keystone Lights, because I kept referring to it as that. People would be like, Keyhole, Keyhole. And I'd be like, God, why do I keep calling it Keystone? So to break the habit, I went and bought myself a pack of 15 Keystone Lights. It did not help. I now call it Keystone almost 100% of the time. And the honest truth is, what ended up happening is now my entire Trials team calls it Keystone as well. But so we would send 3 people to Temple, and we'd send 1 MIDA user to Keystone. We would have that MIDA user pretend like they were, you know, trying to do something over there, trying to set. It would occupy their time, and we would just set Temple immediately. And once you've set Temple, you can defend from whatever ranges you want. You don't have to deal with the long-range MIDA users who are there. If they sent people to Temple, all 4 of us would go to Keystone, and we would set there. And once again, once you set, you don't have to defend from MIDA ranges. If on offense you can set as quickly as possible, you can basically dictate the pace of the battle, because now they have to come to you. And even though you were attacking, you're now defending. So you can choose your engagements. And that's basically how we beat MIDA players. And we beat them every single round. And I'm not saying that would have worked against the best MIDA players on Earth. In fact, it might not have. But it worked against the majority of MIDA players. It proved it is possible.